Hey, what is up, everybody? It is Jimmy Malloy and my beautiful other half, Marilyn,
Welcome.
coming to you live on Sunday Night Live. It's been a while since we've done this,
I know. I actually kind of started getting nervous because I was like, oh, wait, what? I don't
right?
remember how to do this.
Yeah, it's funny. There have been, different things go. I think the last time we were scheduled to do it, it was 4th of July. And then before that, it was, I don't know, something else. But there have been several other things that have caused us to not do these. And we're happy to be back. It's exciting. So we're gonna pull up this feed on the other channels that we have here. If you are here, go ahead and drop some sort of a comment in the chat. Let us know that you're with us. We're happy to have all of you here. And again, the more commentary that we get, especially on the Facebook side of things, the more commenting and everything that we get, the better off we are as far as being able to have people see what we're doing, right? So we can trick the algorithm a little bit, which we need all the help we can.
We're being shadow banned really bad on Facebook. So if you follow us, if you follow Unmasked Tulare County on Facebook, a lot of times in order to see the posts, I don't even think they send out notifications.
A lot of times I think they are not. You're right.
What you have to do is you physically have to go and click on our
like the group to be able to see
on our group.
it.
Yeah, to check out what's been going on. But I feel like things have kind of calmed down for a little while, ish.
As far as that goes?
Well, just as far as everything.
Yeah, so definitely. But we're back. That's the point. We're back tonight. We're happy to be with you. And so we've got a good night planned, I think.
I'm excited. I'm really excited.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about, if you saw the email that we got, and let us know in the chats and stuff if you got the email, because I did send out an email blast this morning, sent out a blast on a few of the Telegram channels that we're partners with, and hopefully you saw that and are here because you saw some sort of an advertisement. So if you did, let us know. That would be helpful to know if you got the email, if that's what got you here and so forth. It's always good to know how people are hearing from us and what kind of things are effective. So that's definitely a good thing to know. But we're going to be talking about homeschooling and all things homeschool tonight. And the big reason for that is we're just hearing from so many people that are saying, you know what, we need to do something different. Like we need to shake up what's going on in our lives, what's going on in our families. And I think that one of the silver linings maybe to COVID, and we've talked about this before, but one of the silver linings is that it really opened our eyes to what's going on in society. And one of the big portions of society is the school systems. And a lot of us were just like, man, it's not right that they closed the schools. It's not right that when they opened them, they're force masking, our kids and all this stuff. So it got us
and testing teachers.
Then they got us to pay attention, right?
Yeah.
To the things that are going on. And once we started paying attention, we realized that it's not just masking that's an issue in our schools. There's things like curriculum. There's things like, all this kind of Marxist ideology that's being put down on our kids. And these are really, it's becoming to the point where it's, systematically, it's an indoctrination program. And so, I mean, I'm so grateful for the teachers, a lot of the teachers that are out there who are not participating in this and are using their ability to use things like supplemental resources to, teach traditional values in their classrooms. But the problem is a lot of those teachers are either getting fed up and moving out of state or they're retiring. And so we're going to be subjecting our kids to a lot of these younger teachers who know nothing but indoctrination when it comes to the schooling they were brought up in and the credentialing program and things that they've gone through now. So it's important to have your eyes open when it comes to that kind of stuff. And that might be one thing that COVID actually was positive. That was a silver lining in all of that. So we're hearing from a lot of people that are just like, man, this school season, this new school year is coming up, and we don't want to put our kids back in the public school system. And we're not saying that you can't or shouldn't, but we're just saying that we've heard from a lot of people that are like, I don't want to.
Now, Jimmy and I have made the decision to, we have 2 boys. Our oldest just graduated high school. And then we have our youngest who is going to be entering into high school this year. And we made the decision to homeschool him And that was a decision that we made as a family. And I figured, we're just going to do it. And, it is what it is. We're going to, figure it out. And then all of a sudden, I feel like so many people are like, I need help with, figuring out, we're going to homeschool. And I'm just like, I just want people to know that that was a decision that we made as a family. And I hope people aren't feeling pressured that because we are, that they have to. Like, we understand that homeschooling might not be an option for your family. But if you as a family have reached that decision where you guys are going to, we just want to help you out with resources and how to make that transition. And just know that you're not alone. There's a lot of people. That's kind of what prompted this live. And that's why we have a special speaker, because we've never homeschooled. I always kind of played school with the boys when they were younger, but I never officially homeschooled them. And so we're new at this too. And I just want other families to know that you're not alone. We can learn this all together, and we'll create a community that works for us. So,
yeah. And one of the big things that I think it's in people's minds, especially those who haven't homeschooled before. I know it was in my mind. I look at the idea of homeschooling and I think, okay, I'm supposed to recreate what they have at the school. Like that's kind of a tall order. That's something that, okay, I don't know how to do this, that, or the other things. And, how are we going to duplicate what they're doing over there? And one of the things I've learned is that that's not the case at all. You're not trying to duplicate anything. You're trying to basically take the education of your child into your own hands and customize that to where it works for you and your family dynamic. And we're going to talk more about that here in a few minutes.
We're getting really excited. We need to do our giveaway.
We need to do a giveaway. So we've got a few people on here. We are going to
jump right into it.
We're going to do a giveaway while we're doing some announcements. And so we have this book that we got some time ago, but it's a book by Dr. Ben Carson, and it's a children's book that he wrote called Why America Matters. And it's a great little children's book. It goes through, it's about the Judeo-Christian values of America and its founding and the importance of the 4 pillars of the American Cornerstone Institute, which are faith, liberty, community, and life. And so it's just taking those concepts and putting it into language that, a young child could understand. So we're going to give this away. And if you have kids, or if you have grandkids, or if you know somebody who's got kids or grandkids that could benefit from this, hopefully it'll work out nicely for you. So the question, we always ask a question, and we ask you to drop the comments or drop your answer in the comments. We would ask you, we're going to let you comment more than once, but I'd ask you not to go rapid fire, like every answer you can think of all at the same time. So the question that we came up with for tonight is,
what year were we born in? We were born the same year, so I guess.
Yeah. So exactly. So Marilyn and I were born the same year.
I think a lot of people are going to know this one.
You think so? Well, let's find out. So what year were Marilyn and I born? First one in the comments to get that right.
We're a lot younger than you guys think. And y'all, if you can drop some hints on how to get rid of forehead wrinkles. Natural ways, though. Natural ways. I don't want to do Botox.
Well, there you go.
I don't want to do Botox.
So drop some comments in there. What year do you think we were born? If you get it right, you will be the proud owner of this book, this fantastic book. And we're going to do some announcements while we see some, hopefully some comments come across. I'm not seeing any yet. All right.
Because they're scared. Look, the first person that guessed just got it, but I don't know who that came from.
Oh, somebody said it.
Paul got it.
What? That was Paul?
Yes, I knew it. I told you
Paul.
it was going to be easy.
Okay. Well,
good job, Paul.
There we have it.
We'll see Paul, so we'll give him this.
That's true. Well, right off the bat, first guest got it, 1982. He probably looked at the Facebook profile or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys were nervous to answer that because you don't want to try to guess a woman's age, right? I'm sure that's what it was.
Yeah.
Probably. All right. So we got a couple of announcements to make real quick. One is that you guys know that we have a coalition of groups that are within the county that we work with on doing different things. One of those is Tulare County Coalition for Freedom out of Exeter. So that's James McMurtry and his whole group out of there in Exeter. And they are putting together, I'm going to put up on the screen real quick so that y'all can see it, what I'm talking about. Boom, there it is. So there is, whoops. He's putting together something called the Sojourners School of Self-Reliance. So they're going to be doing classes over in Exeter, actually kind of the hills above Exeter where he lives. And you can see a little bit of the classes that they're doing in June. We wanted to make, or July. We wanted to make sure that we advertise this with a little bit of time so that you can get signed up if you'd like to. Their first classes are going to be July 30th. And there's two of them going on that day, 9 o'clock and 11:30. So as you can see right here, I'm just going to let this thing go and loop for you while we talk about it. If you are interested, you see that they're going to be doing classes that basically are teaching, things like first aid, things like pantry prep, stuff like if you were to have to be able to survive on your own. A lot of this is survival stuff, right? Herbal medicine, having loadout bags, things along those lines, first responder stuff. So they're deciding to host these classes for people to be able to, become self-reliant, really. And so if you are interested in that, you can email or call James and get signed up. Again, that first one is going to be July 30th, which is 2 Saturdays from now. They'll be held up at their ranch in the foothills. And so you can get signed up there. If you have any questions or need anything further, you can certainly get a hold of us. We can put you in touch with James. So his phone number is
also on there, so and his email is on there also.
Well, there you go. But if you weren't able to write it down right now live while it's up on the screen, then you can reach out to us at a later date. So I wanted to make you aware of that thing. What else did we have for announcements? I think, we wanted to talk a little bit about elections. So local elections are coming up in November, right? So November 8th is going to be elections for things like school boards, city council members, a lot of these special districts that are local to our specific communities. And we've been talking a lot for a long time about the elections that'll be coming up and the fact that we need to find people who will run for those seats who are like-minded with us. Well, the time is now. So the way this works is that anybody who wants to run for public office, local office, has to register. There's some steps involved to getting registered to actually be on the ballot. And one of those steps is that you have to contact the county registrar of voters and make an appointment to go in and become officially a candidate. So that appointment window opened up last Monday, and appointments are going to start tomorrow and run for about 3 weeks until that time closes on August 12th. So if you are somebody who is on the fence, if you're somebody who was thinking, well, maybe this is something I could do, but I'm not quite sure, now is the time to make that decision. Because you have to make that appointment, get in there, get all your paperwork filed and all that fun stuff, and then get ready to run the campaign. So, if you don't do it now, between now and August 12th, the window is closed. There's nothing you can do for the 2022 election. So, any of you who might be on the fence, waiting for something or waiting to have that conversation with a neighbor or a loved one, now is the time because we're running out of time. So I just want to put a bug in your ear if you are one of those people who is indeed interested, right?
Yep.
Good stuff. Okay, so third announcement, and this may mean more to you after our conversation tonight, but we wanted to make you aware of something that's going on up in Northern California, and that is actually a homeschool. Whoops, why is that down at the bottom? I don't want it that way. There we go. This is a homeschool convention that's being hosted by a group called something. It just disappeared on me. Let me see.
Freedom Angels?
No, it's being hosted by a group called Northern California Homeschool Convention from Destiny Community Center. Now, this thing's going to be up in Rockland, which is a little bit northeast of Sacramento. So it's going to be a bit of a drive for anybody who wants to come from Tulare County. But it is something that's out there. And so if you are thinking about homeschooling, wanting to homeschool, and want to make a drive to head up there on July 23rd, that's this coming Saturday, starting at 8 a.m. So it'd either be an early morning or you'd want to go up and stay Friday night to be a part of that. But if you want to do that, you can sign up here. They have a www.hdcc.org the nchc.us, where you can sign up for that thing and go up there. But if that's something that you're interested in, I wanted to make that available to you, or make you aware that that is there as well. Okay, so all of that being said, we were kind of rushing through announcements and things because we wanted to give time to have a good conversation with our guest. We wanted to give time at the end for some questions and answers that maybe we didn't come up with, and wanted to leave plenty of time with still honoring all of your time. So, like we said, we're going to be talking about homeschooling, and wanted to give kind of an introduction to it. So did we have a bio, or do we want to let her kind of introduce herself?
No, I told Frankie that she could introduce herself. I said she knows herself better than I know her.
Right on. So we'll just do a little short introduction then, I guess. So Frankie Miller is a friend. She's a member of our group, has been since basically the beginning, and just a great person. But one thing about Frankie is that she's been a homeschooling mom for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
She got a lot of kids, and she's put them all through school at home. And, we're going to invite her on because, like Marilyn said earlier, we're definitely advocates for homeschooling, but we haven't done it. So we're like, who would be, the local expert that we could talk to about it? And both of us were like, we got to get Frankie on. So anyway, without any further ado, Frankie, I want to say, welcome to you.
Far from an expert, I just have my own experience, and the things that I've learned through that experiences are different. I have to say that.
Sure. So I think that we're going to have a little bit of a lag here. It sounds like. Can anybody in the comments tell me if you can hear that echo or if it's just us? Blah, blah, blah. I say that and then I stop talking so you wouldn't be able to hear. Okay. So anyway, Frankie, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, they say they can hear the echo, so I'm going to apologize for that. Trying to think of what we can do to minimize that. YouTube just froze, it says. Hopefully not. Okay, so there's an echo there. I don't know that there's really anything I can do about that. Except, well, I might be able to, where's the mute? There it is. How about now? Can we hear an echo now still? Anybody who's on there? Okay, I don't think so. I'm not hearing the echo because I just muted you. So I guess while we're talking, we're going to mute you. And while you're talking, we're going to mute us. And then we're going to see how that works as we go. So anyway, Frankie, if you want to just take a couple minutes and tell, your 2-minute version of your story when it comes to homeschooling, your kids, all that fun stuff, and maybe why you guys decided to go down that journey.
Okay. So when I was young, I was 16, I started working, and I was able to see all sorts of school situations, working in classrooms for short periods of time. And we put our kids in public school from the experiences I had working in different public schools. I didn't know what we would do. We figured we'd do public school or private school, learned about homeschooling, and it was the perfect match for us. So we just started. We about animals and just doing all the things people do naturally. You teach them how to count. You teach them how to use a knife and a fork and how to tie their shoes. That's homeschooling at the priest kept them home and continued when academics needed to start.
It sounds like you're breaking up a bit just from the echo in the comments. I think we can get the gist of it, but I think we're losing certain words and things. So if I ask you to repeat yourself, Frankie, it's not because I'm being rude or anything. It's just a sound quality issue. So just right off the bat. So I think what we'll do is maybe get into some of the questions. And what we were thinking about was, from the perspective of somebody who's never done this, who, most of us have sent our kids to public schools without question, right? Because that's what you do. And, your kid gets old enough and you start sending them to kindergarten or preschool or wherever. And it maybe has just been now that certain people are saying, maybe we should be exploring other alternatives. Maybe we should do this a little different than what we've done in times past. So I'm trying to think from a perspective of a parent who's really never even considered this before. And that's really not that hard, because that's where I've been, is I hadn't really considered it before up until recently. But the thing is, what kinds of questions would some of these parents have? And I'm thinking that we'll have the people who are on here live, and then we'll also have people who are going to watch this after the fact. So I'm hoping it'll be a benefit to people in both categories. But first of all, I guess the first question that we would ask is, how does homeschooling work? Like, I know that there are different types or different ways that you can go about homeschooling. It's not necessarily one size fits all. So can you talk to maybe a couple different types of homeschooling just right off the bat that people would have the option for?
Sure. Lots of people think home at home, like you mentioned earlier, recreating what the public school system does. Homeschooling is knowing your kids, getting to know how they learn, what their strengths, what is their interest in life, what's their goal, weaknesses, but we really want to exploit their strengths. And we want to teach them something the public schools do well. The public schools teach compliance. We want confidence and free thinking, and just letting them be the people who they are, not breaking them down for that.
Right on. So you can do that a couple different ways, right? You can either join a homeschool group or a homeschool charter system, right? Or you can actually create your own private school. Is that correct?
Yes, I do want to point out that charter schooling is not technically homeschooling. A charter school, you're still a part of the public school system, and the public school system from the state and federal government. You're doing all the work. It's like doing self-checkout at Walmart work, but they still get the benefit. And you're still required to follow their sometimes vaccination schedules. They can do whatever they want for them. So charter schoolers do the work of homeschoolers, but it's not technically homeschool. Independent homeschooling is what I've always done. And that's just done simply by filing an affidavit. The affidavit is not permission from the government to homeschool your child. The government, you are homeschooling your child. You own your children for life. And so you're not obligated to send them to public school. This is just a way you are just notifying them that you're opening a private school with a student, or in my case, 8, and then you go about your business, and they have no ability to check your curriculum. You're not required to do vaccinations or tests, or it requires private schools that it runs.
So talking about the affidavit, there is, and I love the way you phrase that the children belong to you. And that seems to be one of the things that is in question these days, right? Is who the children actually belong to, whether they belong to the state and the education system, or whether they belong to the parents. And I mean, we have a like-minded group of people here who believe that our children belong to the parents, and that we should direct, the way that their education is brought up. And so that's an important thing as a part of the process, because it is a law that our kids have to go to school, right? So there's a little bit of paperwork involved where we say, okay, we recognize that our kids do have to go to school. We're going to, operate within that law, but we're not going to do it in the traditional public school process. And so that's that word, the affidavit that you just mentioned. Do you want to talk a little bit about how that works? Because I'm thinking from a standpoint of somebody who's never even thought about this before, what is that? How do I not get arrested or, for truancy when my kid just stops showing up to school?
If your student is enrolled in Scout in the proper way, you want to do the forms through the school district to withdraw them to a private school. When you file your affidavit, you are actually making a private school, and you need to have a name for it. And it's a very simple process. There are websites you through each question and how to do it. I always recommend joining, which is Homeschool Legal Defense Association, and they have it on how to fill that out. And they're also lawyers for, I think it's $12 on your back pocket. If your school gives you any problem, you say, okay, I'll have my lawyer call you. And
Right.
They take it very, very seriously. And you need to fill out the affidavit if you're or more. And October 1st through October 5th, schooling at any time, and not fill out that affidavit until October 1st to October legal.
So that is an important thing for anybody who is going to be considering this route, is that this paperwork has a small window, like a 2-week window, that it needs to be filed. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't start homeschooling before that, right?
Fill it out in that window. You can fill it out before or after, but
okay,
all of the private fill it out at the same time. So that's the time period where it's opened up. And so you won't raise such a red flag as if you do it by yourself 6 weeks after the window. Mm. So they want a snapshot of all of the private schools in California from 15th. So that's the best time to fill it out. The website for the affidavit doesn't go for that window. I've tried to help somebody fill it out before that window opened yet. So don't worry about it. If you start schooling in late August or something, may not be live. It's okay. You're still legal. Just
okay.
Join HSLDA and go on with your homeschooling.
Am I on mute?
Go ahead.
Okay, because see, that was going to be my question, Frankie, is wait a minute. Like, our school year is probably going to start before October 1st, so we're going to start homeschooling Jacob, but we won't have filed our affidavit. Now, my question to you is, sorry, I'm kind of jumping to the Q&A, and I'm going to ask a personal question I kind of forgot for a moment. Do we will also need, because he's registered for high school. He is registered. He has his classes. He hasn't received his schedule yet, but we will also need to inform the school district that he's not going. He will not be attending. Correct?
Correct. Right. And I would join HSLDA first, power of attorney behind you, and just tell them he's going to a private school. Paperwork that they require for withdrawal.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So you're talking about HSLDA. Now, Paul Belt, thank you for being in the comment section for us. He's put a couple of links both on YouTube and on Facebook for HSLDA. I'm going to just real quick pop this up on our screen here. So that is kind of showing just the main website for HSLDA. Now, Frankie, you mentioned a second ago, and I'll just kind of repeat it because you're breaking up a little bit. But HSLDA is a group of, it's what, Homeschool Learning Something Association. It's the, hang on. I got you on mute. Say that again.
It's association. They are.
Say that again, Frankie.
Homeschool Legal Defense Association
Oh, legal.
as a
Okay.
homeschool parent.
Okay, so Homeschool Legal Defense Association. There we go. So that's basically a group of attorneys, a group of people who are passionate about maintaining the ability of parents just like us to be able to homeschool freely in all 50 states. And so they work a lot on the legal side of this thing. They do have a membership, which Frankie's talking about. It's a $12 a month membership that allows you access to all of their resources. If you were to ever get into a disagreement, or if there was somebody who came and said you're not doing this right or whatever, you would be able to utilize those resources if you were ever questioned, right?
Yes, that's right. And they have a lot of other resources available to members. Very intimidated when my children started becoming high school age, and I used their homeschool counselors a lot.
Right. So I'm just kind of going through and hovering over some of these different portions of their website here. So they've got, getting started teaching my kids. So they've even got resources here for people who want to get started and aren't quite sure what to do. There's obviously a little tab that will give you access to state homeschool laws, legislative action center. There's a community aspect of this with different webinars, an ability to find homeschool groups. It looks like grants for homeschooling and so forth, and just a lot of resources all within this one organization for $12 a month. I mean, that sounds like it's a pretty good deal.
And I like to call them up and talk to a California specialist once or twice a year, and those that are lurking in the background of California's legislature that are threatening us, and I want to know what's going on.
Well, yeah, that's a great resource there for sure. So, that's a place where we could probably go and get some help when it comes to just the legal side of making sure the school knows that our kid's not coming back, and then, maybe even helping out with that affidavit. Or do you recommend another type of a website when it comes to help for the affidavit?
Sorts of free websites that take you step by step through the affidavit process. Really, it's using your name, your address, your phone number, those sorts of things, answering some general questions about it's very simple. I think it takes me a minute and a half to fill out. This tip is print a copy for yourself. If anybody shows up at your door, you want ready to show them. That's the only thing a truant officer could ever ask for something. I did have a truant officer come once to my house. We were done. Children were checking the mail, and she saw them out during school hours, and had them show her where they lived. And I asked if she needed to see my affidavit, and she sat in her car and wrote her little report and left. And there was absolutely nothing else that was called HSLDA immediately and said, what do I do if they come back? Which they can. Tulare County is very homeschool friendly.
That, I think, is a good thing to know, right? So, I mean, I would imagine if we lived in San Francisco County or LA County, it might be a little bit different there. But Tulare County, over your 20 plus years of experience, has been pretty friendly towards you.
Very friendly. We've had very little issue as a homeschool community.
Excellent. So that's great. I wanted to maybe jump into the next thing. And again, if you guys have questions, pop them into the chat. And so that would be helpful. And Frankie, I don't know, you might have access to the Facebook chat after the fact. If we do have some technical difficulties, or if it's difficult for people to hear what you're saying, would you mind maybe going back through at some point in the next few days and answering any questions that would be in there? Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to pop into the next question that we kind of thought about. Okay, if I'm not sure what we're doing, a lot of people I know that we've heard from are just like, I'm not a teacher, right? I'm just this person's parent. I'm a businessman, or I work as a janitor or whatever. So I'm not a teacher. I feel inadequate to teach my kids. So what would you say to somebody who may be feeling that way?
Is you were raised growing up through public school, and it's left you feeling in to tell you something about the public school system. And so then I always, we're learning together. I have just as much to learn as you, and I really did. Math was my downfall. When we thought about starting my husband to teaching math, when I reached the top of my understanding. But the fact is, while I learned, and I was able to go through all the way through high school math with them, and now math, hooray. It's just a matter of finding what works for you as a student. They have different learning styles. You'll have to figure each other out.
Sure. And that was something too that I thought about. I'm like, okay, just in researching this stuff, I've seen stuff on learning styles and teaching styles and even different styles of homeschool that you can go with. I think that's probably a little deeper discussion than what we want to get into tonight. Hopefully we can do this again and get into some of those details. But as far as just being able to teach your own kid, I think one of the important things is we're not trying to duplicate the entire system that they have in the public school system, right? We're not trying to be an expert in every subject. We're trying to give them an education that gives them a foundation for the rest of their lives. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to be an expert in trigonometry to be able to do that, right?
What people are surprised about is how little time academics actually take. You 2 to 3 hours, depending on your student's age, on academics. We aren't having to take 15 minutes to transfer from one activity to another. Take as long. Usually, the academic portion of our day was done before lunchtime. You get into a groove once you figure things out. It really doesn't take a long time, and then you have life worth living. That's where they learn their interests, and they get to study, practice their hobbies, and go to classes and lessons and park days and things.
Excellent point. Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about just the different lifestyles of families, right? So, if you have a situation where, mom and dad are married, mom stays home, dad goes to work, that's probably the ideal situation for homeschooling. But you and I both know that there's a lot of home situations that don't necessarily fit that criteria. Maybe both parents in the homes work. Maybe it's a single mom or a single dad that obviously has to work to put food on the table. So if somebody's looking at the option of homeschooling and saying, you know what, just with my work schedule, with, the way that our family structure, family dynamic is, like, I can't afford to spend 8 hours a day here educating my kids because I don't have 8 hours a day. And I think you kind of touched on that just a second ago, but did you want to expand and maybe talk about why homeschooling can still work if you're not in that, dad works and mom stays home kind of a home situation?
Yeah, and you don't have one parent staying home. You have to have somebody to supervise your children. Public school has changed our society over the past several generations that expected to be gone from the time they're 5, and they're gone all day, so mom can work. You need to have a family member, a grandparent, a friend who's also homeschooled. Those kinds of co-ops that people will do sometimes, where subject and I'll teach that subject. Those kinds of cooperative learning situations. There are usually paid programs that you can join where the kids have tour campus for several hours, so they're getting socialization, electives, that sort of thing, that usually costs some money. People are used to free education, and they have a hard time thinking, oh, yes, with government money, like charter schools, comes government strings. So the only thing that will hurt the system is losing their students 100%. Spend some money on it, but what better way to invest than in your kids and their lives?
Sure.
So, Frankie, I just kind of want a little bit of reiteration on this. So, let's say, I guess this is a hypothetical, but let's say somehow it became law that the current, jab thing that's being offered was a requirement for school. But if you did charter, like a homeschool charter, because it's still technically a part of the public education, they would fall under that requirement, correct?
As far as I know, charters will room on those things. I have never charter schooled. I only have friends who've done it, and I read about experience with it. But as far as I know, there's a little bit of wiggle room right now. That disappears.
Okay.
With government strings comes, or with government money comes, they'll pull them whenever they want to.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's the big point to make right there, right? Is if you joined a homeschool charter type thing, you are still basically at the mercy of whatever those strings are that are attached, that come down from Sacramento or that come down from DC. Whereas if you're doing a private school situation for homeschooling, you can avoid a lot of those things. And that's probably where HSLDA comes into play as well, is because they're the ones who are putting, the time in as far as attorneys, making sure that laws aren't popping up that would jeopardize your ability to really take that education into your own hands for the kids, right? So that's just kind of another reason why it would be important to join a group like HSLDA.
Yes, and they keep their members apprised of what's going on too. Like I said, I call in sure nothing's slipping under the radar that I've missed. They send out a magazine, read the whole thing. and so they're just great though at following that, because who can that the government is doing, as you've learned, haven't you?
Right.
They're sneaking. Yeah. And
Absolutely.
I saw in the comments somebody was asking about, have you ever had somebody homeschool? I have not. We've homeschooled all 8 from the beginning all the way through high school. 1 year of high school left with our youngest.
So you're almost done with that process, that side of things. Very good. Okay, so again, if you have more questions, that is fantastic. Put them in the comments. We'll probably either hit them as we're going if it kind of makes sense, or we'll just come back to them here at the end. So let's talk a little bit about curriculum. So that's another one of the big questions that people have is, what in the world do I teach my kid? If I pull them out of public education, then, how am I even supposed to know what I'm supposed to teach them? But just from the little bit of research that I've done on this, seems like there's so many different possibilities and opportunities that are out there, where it's really just a matter of finding what makes sense for your family and picking one, right?
Yeah, there are hundreds, probably thousands of different curricula available and we didn't even really have internet the way it is now. So people start with cheap and easy because you don't want your curriculum, you don't want to dump a curriculum and hate it. So you want to take the time to learn what's out there and see to fairs like the one that's going on in Rockland. They do have them in Fresno and Bakersfield. There could be some coming up that are closer. And use them at first There's one that's free called Easy Peasy, and that all grades all the way through high school, and it links to different sources that are online. There's other complete boxed curriculum called there's several, but coming to mind, Accelerated Christian Education, and those are like little workbooks and lesson, and you fill out the questions and you do the test. It's very easy, and they're not $200 for a student for the whole year. Those are good places to start until you teach and you learn how they like to learn.
So I think that's an important thing to mention is we've got August that's coming up, right? And so in our minds, we say, okay, August, that means school starting. This is when I would have to start with my kids, right? That's just how our minds are wired. So if I'm going to homeschool my kid in August, obviously time is ticking here when it comes to curriculum. What I'm hearing you say is that in the beginning, you don't necessarily have to go out and drop $1,000 on curriculum until you sort of figure this thing out. So, just bare bones, right off the bat, you don't necessarily have to have that piece of it all figured out, right? You can use some of these free or really cheap resources to learn about your kid. Maybe you haven't spent a whole lot of time trying to teach them this kind of stuff, and there's going to be a learning process for you and also a learning process for them, right? So as far as getting started with homeschooling, what would you say is kind of the necessities or the things that you would need to have in order to get started?
Which you are, because you filed an affidavit. You need to offer the same courses. You need to do English. You need to do math. You need to do history. You need to do science. School, you get to choose how you're going to teach those things. And as a private school, use whether or not to use books or a formal curricula. If your child is only choose to go outside and turn over rocks and study biology by figuring out what was this thing alive, and let's watch videos about this bug and learn its life side, fun and very easy and laid back with small people. If they're older, then you probably want a bit more backbone to it, and that's where you get into, like I said, Easy Peasy. It's a great one for you. It's very simple, click. Some kids don't learn very well online. You can easily enough have some lessons to start with, and then search curricula subjects and find something that you can afford and that will engage your child.
So to me, I think of curriculum from the standpoint of if we're disconnecting from the public school system, if we're taking control of the education of our child. For Marilyn and I, we're Christians, and this is what guides everything that we do, right, is our relationship with Christ. So we want to find something that is going to be compatible with that. We want math to have Christ inserted into it. We want history, obviously, to have Christ inserted into it. And what I've seen is that there are so many different types of curriculum out there. Maybe that's not necessarily your jam. Maybe you have, different priorities in life. Privately, I would, want to have a conversation with you. But if you wanted to have something different in there, there's definitely different types of curriculums to meet different types of value systems, right?
Yes. And like in my situation, I have 8 kids. They're 9 years apart. They have different abilities academically, but we were able to study history. We used a curriculum called Mystery of History, and it had a portion, and then it had a different resources listed for all the different grades, so they could study on their own. We went through that twice. It's a 4-year cycle, and then we moved a bit different called Truth Quest History. Another good one. They have guides, and you can all the way up to seniors. So it's an excellent resource for a guide, and you have history for your whole year, for your whole family. Science curricula that are written in the same way. Apologia comes to mind. There's series for children who are in elementary school, and then they have harder science for, and they come from a Christian perspective.
Very cool. I love that. So you said that there are basically 4 subjects that you have to teach that would match the public school, and that was where'd you write that down? English, math, science, and history. Is that correct? I have you on mute. Sorry, I'm going to unmute you in just a second. But that was English, math, science, and history, right?
Yes, you have to teach whatever you have to have available, whatever available. So you'd want to have available a government class for a high schooler, foreign language, all of those sorts of elective classes as well. But you choose. You're not tied to the public schools graduation requirements. They may require only 2 years of math. My homeschool requires 4 years of math to graduate. I keep going. They may only require 1 semester of government, but we do civic because I'm teaching my kids good citizenship and all the ins and outs of the government that takes. So as a private homeschooler, you get to make your own curriculum choices, and you just have to have available the same coursework that the public school might offer.
Now, can you change? Because let's say you said it like, in high school, in the public school system, let's say it's 2 years of math, but in your private homeschool, you required 4 years. Can you change that and say, oh, now I'm only going to require 3? Unmute. Hang on.
Sorry, hang on,
Just a minute, Frankie.
Start that answer over. Go.
She said absolutely.
Absolutely. You're not writing down graduation for your homeschool with the government. It's different for each student. An unusual situation where I had so many students. I worked my kids where they were uncomfortable. I want them successful, but I want them challenged. And that means different kids. And so where I might have required this student to finish algebra, might have needed to go all the way to trigonometry because they were done with algebra when they were in 7th grade. You know what I mean? You just personalize that education.
Yeah. No, that's good. And I think that's an important point to make as well, is that you don't have to match the standards, right, that come from the state. So, grade level standards, for example, teaching to the tests the way that the public schools do. You don't have to do things that way. You can make up your own requirements. And graduation requirements is another thing. And that was one of the other questions I had in my mind when it comes to a diploma, right? So you bring your kids all the way through high school, and they would qualify for a diploma. Am I correct in my thinking that if we have our own private school, we get to determine what the requirements are for them to earn a diploma?
And so that's where, if your child has met your standards, you can graduate that child with a diploma. Aside, HSLDA has a wonderful graduation package. That's where we professionally done. I just fill out a form with the information, and they come with their nice padded ribbons, everything.
Very cool.
And I did see a question in the comments asking if graduation or diplomas have been rejected by any colleges. I'm not aware. Colleges scramble for homeschooled kids because they know how to think, and they know how to they know how to write and all of these things, and so them being rejected. And when that happens, which it does, I've seen it in other states, CA covers that too, because they are as most private schools aren't. And so your diploma means the same as every other private school diploma. Would reject your student for that is liable to face a lawsuit.
Right.
That actually excites me because in sitting down with all of the professionals in the school district, we had decided that for Jacob, Jacob has special needs, and, knowing his, his abilities and stuff, that having him be on the track for a diploma was probably not
Feasible.
not feasible for him. And so he was going to be on, or he is actually, I guess, still currently on the track to receive a certificate of completion. And this actually excites me because I'm like, now, we can set the rules, not the rules, but
the bar.
yes. And he actually will be capable of receiving a diploma, not a certificate of completion. And I don't know, for whatever reason, that's a big deal to me. And so I'm excited about that. I'm excited. I really am.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to throw that out there.
For sure. So Frankie, let's talk about, we've talked about resources in the sense of HSLDA, right? So what other kind of resources? Like I'm thinking about maybe not necessarily online resources, but things for maybe the social aspect of this whole thing, right? So obviously if you're taking your kid out of a public school, they're not going to be there with hundreds of other kids every single day. So, what kind of, you mentioned co-ops earlier a little bit. Can you talk a little bit about what a co-op is, and what other types of resources might be out there locally to be able to meet that socialization or group learning sort of need that kids have?
Yeah, I sent a list to Marilyn of things that are available here locally. Most of my connections are on Facebook, a long list of different Facebook groups that I'm aware of. I'm sure that I'm not aware of. So anybody who is beginning homeschooling, if they have a friend who's already, they get their social connections. There are park days all throughout our county of the week. There's a monthly skate day at Rollertown where it's just homeschoolers and they play Christian music. So you can go, and I think it's $5 or something, and you kids. There's park days, there's science days. People set up field trips, sanitarium, going to the aquarium, going to different museums, and getting involved in groups. You can get the information about that. One especially, there's hiking the good and the beautiful, which I've seen. I haven't participated, but I've seen great things where they go hiking and they're doing nature field trips in our county. So that's great. And sheep findings. I've lived here forever, and I like where was that? I didn't know about that. And Wild and Free Homeschoolers is another one. There's 559 Family Fun. These get posted there. There's actually so many social opportunities. You have to learn you need to make that 2 to 3 hours a day or so for academics. So the things you do as a family. There's a lot of social interaction. Nice thing, homeschoolers tend to know how to speak to people of all different ages, not just people.
Yeah. So it sounds like, it really comes down to finding that community, right? Finding your community or your communities. So it's encouraging to hear that there are so many groups that are local, who are doing these kind of things, and that there are just a tremendous amount of opportunities for people. And I imagine it is, like you said, you really have to pick and choose what opportunities you want to take advantage of, and pick those things appropriately, so you do have time, to be able to get to the academic stuff. That's one of the things that I'm excited about, is just that socialization aspect of it, and the fact that they're not limited to just kids their own age, because I do think that that's so important, is for children to grow up being able to speak and interact with anything from anyone from a young child to a grown-up or an adult. And so that's such a vital piece of education that seems to be missing, where kids, if they're not just around their own friends on text messaging, they have no idea how to communicate with people. So that's an exciting thing.
Yeah, I've been asked before, my kids end up weird. And I always say, you didn't know any weird kids when the people at school, there's no weird kids there where your kids
Right.
going. People are going to be weird. Just like everywhere else, homeschoolers run the gamut. There's the weird kids, and there's the brainy kids, and everybody's different. But you're free to be different without as much.
Yeah. Absolutely. So fantastic. I think that, as far as the questions go that I had written down, we pretty much covered all of them. I want to just open it up for a couple minutes in the chat box. If you had something that you'd been hanging on to for a Q&A time here at the end,
There was a question earlier that asked if people can use YouTube.
As far as curriculum goes?
Well, I wouldn't think as curriculum, but as a resource.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay, so there are lots of homeschooling things on YouTube. I call it, so when we're studying in history, for example, we'll read our section that says, we'll read different living books about that time period or that incident, and or two, because it's an easy way to give some perspective, to see those pictures of the historical reenactment kind of things, So I use YouTube carefully. I don't just hand the remote to my kid and say, study this. Right. But yes, there is, I'm trying to think of it right now. There's a whole tube. It's written by Bill Gates. So be careful with it. But comments, or I'll say it. But there is a complete homeschool curriculum, Common Core, that's on YouTube. We use only a tiny bit of it, usually for art when we're studying. I like a painting for art study. We'll go there, and they have painting talking about the history of the painter and different things that I would have no idea for that. That's about the only thing I use of it.
Right. So it sounds to me like one of the things we wanted to accomplish by having this live tonight and having you on is we wanted to try to remove as much fear or as much anxiety from the idea of homeschooling as possible. And I mean, I can speak just from my own perspective. It wasn't until very recently that I was really on board with doing this. And that was really just because of maybe a stigma that I had in my mind, or maybe a fear of having to recreate something that I didn't feel like we'd be able to recreate. And, really kind of what I've learned through, watching some documentaries, doing some studying, talking to different people, is that the customization aspect of being able to homeschool is really what intrigues me the most. Is that, if we have, even between kids, like you were talking earlier about, you have 8 different kids with 8 different needs, and even within different subjects, whether it be math or history or whatever, obviously you're going to have kids that have strengths in different categories there, and you can customize each child's education according to who they are and what their strengths are and maybe what their calling in life is going to be. Marilyn mentioned we have Jacob who's got special needs, and we can literally customize his education to where his strengths are and where his needs are and all that. And he's not stuck in a box with 30 other kids in every class and just being taught the same old thing that anybody else is. And so that's what really, it just kind of excites me for that. And the fact that we live in an age now where there are so many different options as far as things like curriculum or things like socialization or things like any of this. Enough people are doing it and have been doing it, like yourself, for such a long time that these resources are already developed. And so for those of us who are stepping into this and fearful, or stepping into this and just not sure what in the world to do, like I so appreciate, people like you, Frankie, who have gone before this and are freely offering up advice and offering up resources and offering up all of these things for those of us who are stepping into these waters. So it's an exciting time for people who are looking at this.
Yeah, and I want to give some personal experience that are more confident in their homeschooling. Again, I worked in schools for a long time, age levels from infant toddler programs all the way up into the community college. And so we spent several years fostering, and I had once as a foster kid who came in, and he stayed with us through his senior year and went off and hopefully was successful. He didn't stay in touch, but he was in grade addition and subtraction to earn his diploma. And public school diploma doesn't necessarily mean they mastered algebra. That was encouragement, as my kids were pretty young at that time. I was like, well, my 8-year-old and he was a great kid. He just wasn't academically strong. And
Sure.
that's okay, be academically strong in math necessarily to be a good welder or to work. And that's the other thing. Kids who are not college bound fall far behind college so hard. Trades pay so well and will train you for free and pay you while they're training you. And so getting your kids interested in a trade, those opportunities for them is such a great career path, and not at schools. They're looked down upon if they're going to go into a trade.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
Jimmy, we had an experience actually with that where our oldest was being offered like extra credit if the parents or one of the parents, we both ended up taking it, some like classes at the school, and they just kept going on and we're just drilling it in the parents, like, college. Jimmy, and then Jimmy's there to, rock the boat and stuff. And he's like, what about a trade school, And it was funny because something ended up happening where it wasn't the air conditioner. It got like super cold in there. It was like, it got really cold and they're trying to figure out the thermostat and stuff. And he goes, yeah, I bet you had a technician, somebody that went to a trade school that knew. And so I'm like, oh my goodness, like, and there was one parent that was in there, and she said, she goes, my son doesn't know that he doesn't have to go to college. She had like instilled it in his head that he had to go to college after high school.
Yeah.
It's like crazy. It was so crazy. Anyways, I was like, wow, it was surreal just what they were, and I'm not saying that there's anything good or bad on college. I'm just saying it's almost like frowned upon if you don't go to college directly after high school. And we're just trying to say there's more options out there, And anyways, we did have another question. Do you think there needs to be a downtime before starting homeschool after having been in public school?
There's actually a name for that. It's called deschooling. Deschooling. Websites on that, and it really does talk to you about how to de-escalate behaviors, to set new expectations, to get to know each other before you start hardcore academic. Yeah, to de-school.
So somebody who's coming from that environment where their kid has gone to public school, they should probably look into that concept of de-schooling, right? Maybe look it up, see what goes into that, and act appropriately, I guess, when it comes to kind of almost, it's like deprogramming, right? So that you can start fresh with something that's tailor-made to them.
The kids have to learn how to learn. I'll share one example of a kid day, a public school child, and we were working on adjectives, and so the kids would close their eyes and they would hold an object, and they would feel it. They didn't know they would feel it and describe it and try to guess it. So they were using words like this, or square, or hard, or whatever. And so when it was was their turn, they did not know how to do it, and actually got very upset and started crying, and they kept repeating, what's the right, what am I supposed to say? Because she didn't know how to come. And that was really eye-opening, that this was a hard concept, and she had so much trouble with that.
Yeah.
So I had to let her open her eyes and just talk her down. So learning a different way of not just parroting back what you've been told. That's why deschooling comes in.
Sure.
And there's lots of different homeschool methods. So there's traditional, which is like school at home, like we started talking about. That doesn't generally work. There's a classical method. So somebody who's interested in having a big community might want to check. It is a paid for experience. It is definitely a community. There's unschooling, which is very much child-led. There's usually not a schedule. Just the daily stuff you do is how they're learning. A lot of people thrive in that. Co-ops, like we talked about, where parents get together and share the teaching. 4 or 5 groups of families getting together to learn something together, which is what I do. It's rich literature. You're learning from books that are 100 or getting away from the revisionist history and revisionist life. You do a lot of narration, copy work, very short lessons. We'll do what's called a world schooling or road schooling, because they're traveling in an RV, and that's what they're learning about. That climate, that history. It's very intriguing. It's cool. It's better than regular school. There is online school, like the Easy Peasy Online. It's Alpha and Omega, switched on Schoolhouse. Lots of options that are like that. Studies, usually done with elementary school kids, where everything is your science, your reading is all about the same topic. Maybe amphibians, or maybe prairie. You go through that series of books and learn all sorts of things based on that. Some people are familiar with Montessori or Waldorf schools. Again, usually pretty free and eclectic, which is a little bit of everything, which is what most people tend to end up. Hey, if one thing doesn't work, if you buy this curricula or use this program, use this work, put it away. Try something else. You're not locked into it.
Right.
Your curricula it's not your master. So don't ever feel like just because you put some money into it, stick with it, even though it's not working. Change. That's why we're doing this. We're flexible, and we're making.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that, you know, that's really the whole point, right? Is that, you know, you're pulling your child out of a rigid system that it's either take it or leave it. And you're bringing them into a situation where we get to tailor make around not only the kid, but also about you. How is your teaching style going to work as well, right? So you mentioned earlier that in a lot of cases, you are learning just as much or more as the child is. And I think it's an important point that that's okay, that that's normal, that if you are not the one who's coming at it from a standpoint where you have your doctorate in, you know, science or mathematics or whatever, that's fine. If you're learning the lesson along with the kid, that's not an issue. That's actually normal for most of us, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we want to create lifetime learners. Important to say, I don't know anything about this. Let's find out together. You know, or let's figure it out. What are you interested in learning? My son wanted to learn to study and built a forge and started melting down all our recycling. It was fun. Wow. And he learned what didn't work. He ended up tearing it apart and trying another thing. He hasn't done it that far, but he could if he wanted to, if he pursued it. But in the meantime, he had a lot of fun, engineering and all sorts of science, you know, and just the confidence. I think I want to learn this. Let me learn how to do it.
Right.
So, and now that I have adults, I come up to something at work and they don't know how to do it, but they confidently figure it out. And that's my goal. I want to teach them how to gain the information they need when they come up. We're going to teach them all the facts. It's not our goal. We want to teach them how to access the information they need.
I have a question, Frankie. Did you read the curriculum ahead of time? Or did you learn it like with them? Did you read it and just kind of learn as you go, or did you read it ahead of time?
Do you mean before you purchased it, or do you mean like the night before you're teaching it?
I'm talking about the night before, like you're teaching. Like, would you sit down and kind of go over the curriculum ahead of time? I feel like for me, this is what I'm struggling with, is I'm like, okay, I'm the teacher. So I'm going to have to read the curriculum and have all of the stuff I'm overthinking it. Is the truth. But what I want to know is, did you read the curriculum like the night before or whatever you taught it?
Younger, I used a unit study curriculum that did require a lot of teacher prep. I added in my fourth kid. I was like, well, that's too much for me. I can't do that anymore. I actually use a curriculum called Ambleside Online. It's a free curriculum. They have weekly work just written. So if you don't want to use their lesson plan, however you're going to in a week. And usually, no, I don't review things. I have time when they were young, and I don't have the desire when they're older. We're just learning together. We have great discussions. We watch YouTube videos, and then the next. So I don't spend a ton of time in planning, but that's, again, a teacher. So I'm very flexible. I want to have time to drop everything and go do that thing that we heard of. This much work done in a week, I'm happy. You know, so that's a teacher thing. Maybe you'll want to be, you know, more in line with everything and reading everything.
Again, it comes down to preference, right? There's
Yeah.
not a right or wrong answer when it comes to any of these things. It's what works for you, what works for your kid. And it'll probably change. Like you were saying, you started out one way with your first few kids, and then you realize, what, something needs to change here because it's not working for what I'm trying to accomplish. And I think that's the important thing too. Uh, there's not a certain level, just like we're talking about for kids, there's not the standard, the state level standard that has to be met. When it comes to the parents who are doing the homeschooling, there's not necessarily a state level standard that has to be met either. So you can be flexible and you can figure out what works for your family dynamic, your specific teaching style, and your kids' learning style. So that's kind of what's beautiful about it. I guess in one sense, that could come off as really overwhelming, right? Because you're responsible for finding what that combination is. But I guess I would just issue encouragement to anybody who's getting ready to step into this. Don't feel like a burden or like you have to get it all right the first time. You don't have to like have it all together and figured out. And, from day one, you're running the perfect homeschool system. Frankie, you've done this so many times. I'll bet if we asked you about mistakes that you've made or, things that maybe you would have done differently, you just told us, fourth kid in, we decided to change things up a little bit. But I imagine your story is probably full of those kind of things.
Oh, absolutely. I have one would have done far better in school if I had been willing to do workbook, textbook. I sure I want this, I want that. And he did okay. By the time he was in high school, I mean, workbook, textbook. He does better with it, even though I hate it. So I just have to change and figure out what's going on with each one. Always be flexible. Say about this state level stuff you were talking about, the state mandate kind of stuff is free and sounds very high-minded, but their standards really are very low. So don't be intimidated by what the state says that they do. Graduated students around Tulare County, if you ask them, can you tell me what percentage would be off of this price? Can they do taxes?
Right.
Can they change their oil? They just really can't.
That's true. I actually can't
do a lot of those things.
I can't. But you know what though? Jimmy's really good at that, and he taught that to our oldest.
Yeah,
he's good at that. He's good at that.
So one of the things that I was going to just comment on that, I just lost it. I just lost my train of thought. Oh, I do a lot of interviewing for work, right? So I will interview for a lot of entry level positions, and it's amazing to me. It literally is amazing to me. The people who come in with a high school diploma, who graduated from one of the local or even non-local high schools, and their inability to like hold a conversation, their inability to like critically think through anything. And so I think that, the point that you just made is dead on, that the standards, when you look at them on paper, you think, oh man, that's a really high standard for a kid to meet for them to be able to graduate. In reality, when you meet a lot of these kids, and I'm not trying to, rag on anybody, but I'm just saying that, they were able to accomplish the high school graduation requirements, and they're coming out of school without a clue about almost anything. And so, you look at that and you're just like, I'm pretty sure I could at least match that and probably do quite a bit better.
I had a conversation with a grocery clerk, and I asked her what we were celebrating, and she didn't know.
On 4th of July, right? I remember you posting something about that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she didn't know about Independence Day. She had sad. It really is. And, our schools do a disservice to our students because they can do so much better. As parents, should be higher than what the school's expectation is academically and as a citizen, knowing your government, know your rights. They don't teach them their rights, and we are. They don't know their rights and responsibilities as citizens. We get to teach these things, to how they can relate with God. We get to teach them about the Bible, if that's how we also host exchange students, and so we're able to from around the world, different cultures, different expectations, different habits. It's really wonderful.
Yeah, that's amazing. Very cool. Yeah, it's just a fantastic opportunity, really, to be able to customize and get your kids educated in the way that they should go. And I remember your comment there about July 4th and just talking to that student who you would assume is probably a public school educated cashier at the grocery store. And yeah, it's just I think we have an opportunity, especially with all the diversity and inequality and inclusion stuff that's going on in public schools right now. They're really even taking a further step toward appealing to the lowest denominator, right? So when you start talking about equity and trying to make everybody equal, you're never going to lift everybody up to the highest level. So you're going to have to lower everybody down to the lowest level in order to get that equal outcome. And so since there's such an emphasis on that, admittedly, there's an emphasis on that from the departments of education. And so, the inevitable result is that they're going to produce children, who are educated to the least common denominator. And so I think there's a tremendous opportunity. And I would just encourage anybody who is listening to this, who is considering homeschooling and feeling inadequate about your ability to do so. Again, you're going to do at least as good of a job as whatever they're getting in high school. And, there are so many opportunities out there when your child starts to show promise in maybe a specific category. One of the things I was thinking of when you were talking, Frankie, is when you have a kid, maybe this is a kid who's a really hands-on kid and they want to become a welder or a diesel mechanic or, something along those lines. You would have the freedom while they're in high school to actually let them apprentice under maybe a local business owner who does that sort of a thing. And so you would never get that opportunity in a public school, but you'd have the freedom to be able to recognize that in your child and then look around for those opportunities that they may not otherwise have. And so that to me is a really exciting thing. And, if your kid is somebody who is academic and who is going to go to college and get a degree to do a certain thing, you can recognize that as well and put them in a situation where I would imagine these higher level institutions, like you said earlier, are probably drooling over these homeschool kids because they can actually articulate a sentence and communicate with people and have a good head on their shoulders. So I think there's a tremendous opportunity here for people to, do really well by your kid and get into a situation where you can truly customize that education.
Yes. Apprenticeships, you have to know someone because the laws of California
Right.
don't allow you on a job site. So apprenticeships tend to be informal. And so this is something that we always need in the homeschool community, our parents who are with. So I do a lot of baking, cooking, canning, that sort of things, a lot. And, I will teach as many people who want style of class. And so I'm always doing something to try to offer a learning opportunity with something I know. And things I don't know. I need somebody else to teach this and to teach that. And so that's kind of one of the ways to co-op is if you know how to do something, you might not, anybody else wants you to teach their kid how to do it. So please offer that class. You don't have to be articulate. Just have the kids over and show them how to change the oil or change the light, a light switch or whatever you know how to do. Just make for somebody to bring their kid over and learn how to do it. That's what we need is to be a community, not like 5 people can't do all the work. So everybody has to help out.
Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely. Well, I just looked at the time and saw that we were running up against 8:30. Do you have any kind of final thoughts? And again, I want this to be an introduction into a conversation and not so much, the end all be all, like you watched this live and now you're ready to go conquer the homeschool world. I'm hoping to encourage you and let you know that, you can do it, that you don't have to be a rocket scientist or an educator per se to be able to do this whole thing. But did you have any kind of final thoughts, Frankie, for tonight, in that, maybe a question that we didn't cover or something that's just on your heart?
I did want to say that people are welcome to contact if they want to talk about something. I'm on Facebook, Frankie Miller. My profile picture, I'm just kind of looking slightly to the right. And you can call me 558-0407. Give me a text. I'll answer when I can, maybe not right away. Use me as a resource, and I will point you off to other people who may know your, but yeah, use me as a resource, and don't be afraid to ask questions. The only stupid question is an honest question that's left unasked because you're embarrassed. Had to learn, and that's a good thing to model to your kids too. Is I don't know this. So, and I also wanted to give one more resource for there's some libertarian perspective resources that are children, Tuttle Twins.
Yeah.
And then for the junior high and high school, Uncle Eric series by Blue Stocking Press. Resources.
So you were kind of breaking up. We got a little bit of that, but you were talking about elementary age kids, the book series, the Tuttle Twins, for them. And I can attest to that one because we got this series. I think Marilyn got them from you actually. And I read them all personally. And I was just like, these are amazing. And the Tuttle Twins are fantastic. And so they teach, like you said, from a more libertarian perspective, just a lot of different life truths, whether it comes to economics or whether it comes to government, social interactions, different things along those lines. Fantastic resources. And then you said once they get up into like the junior high level, you called it Uncle Eric series of books as well. So for those of you who are looking for something, even if you're not homeschooling, get a hold of these books. Read these to your kids, like in the evening. Let them read to you these books, because you're going to instill some of these timeless values in them. And it's especially important when they're being taught basically the opposite of this in a public school setting or situation. So, these are tremendous resources. Frankie, wanted to extend our gratitude to you for joining us here tonight. And I know I'm just seeing some comments in the comments on YouTube and Facebook that, we were able to set some minds at ease a little bit. And I think that just normalizing this process and just trying to take some of the fear out of it is a huge thing. And so I'm hoping that we can expand upon this in the future, maybe offer some more specific resources and opportunities for people to get in touch. Frankie just, put her name and phone number and everything out there. And, I can attest to the fact that you've been great about answering questions. I know Marilyn's reached out to you on several different things. And you also jump into our Telegram page and Facebook groups and are always willing to help as a resource. So wanted to say thank you. And we greatly appreciate your time on a Sunday Sabbath evening. And we're incredibly grateful that you have been here with us. So thank you.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
All right. We will talk to you soon. Thank you again, Frankie.
Bye, Frankie.
All right. So great stuff. And I know that was choppy. I know you were grabbing, maybe every other word or something. I felt like we could get the gist of what Frankie was talking about. And really, I think that the main points was that, when it comes to homeschooling, it gives you an opportunity to really take control of what the education of your child is going to be. So it allows you to instill your own value system into your children, which that's really what education is. It's a transfer of who you are into your children. And so, I was thinking about the word indoctrination yesterday. And, indoctrination is one of those things that, we look at it as a negative thing. We look at it in a negative connotation. We don't want, these liberals indoctrinating our children. But indoctrination is kind of what education is. And so from the beginning of time, really, parents would indoctrinate or insert doctrine into their children. They would teach them the way to go. They would teach them who they are. They would teach them the right way. The Bible says, raise up a child in the way that he should go. And when he's old, he will not depart from it. That's what education is. And so homeschooling gives us an opportunity to take that back, that ability to train our children in the way that they should go, in the way that our family structure and our family values would dictate that they would go. We're not giving that over to someone else to raise them and train them in the way that they should go. Like, if you guys didn't know it, your kids will spend 18,000 hours in school from the time they are in kindergarten through 12th grade. 18,000 hours. By the time they get into school, you are not the primary person that they're being influenced by if they're going off to another school. So that school needs to represent your values. And what we've been seeing over the last several years is that those values are increasingly becoming detached from what most of us would want for our kids. So guys, when it comes to homeschooling, there's a tremendous opportunity to take back what your kids are being taught, take back control of their education. There are tremendous opportunities, communities that are out there to support you in this. And so lots of different family dynamics, lots of different teaching styles, lots of different types of kids. And so, when it comes to history, there may not be a better time than right now to step into this because there's so much resources and support available. So I guess that's kind of the spiel. Did you have any additional comments or thoughts to make on that?
The only other comment that I wanted to make is that, well, I mean, it's not really, anyways, is that it was a little bit choppy. So there might be some information that people still have questions. They're still feeling a little bit lost. And this is just the introduction. There are still more questions that people probably have.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that maybe down the road, if people would like to put something out, if you want us to, we can have a live kind of a thing where we meet somewhere.
Like an in-person thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
like an in-person thing where we go somewhere, and it would probably be real informal. I don't know, like, I don't know. I'm thinking as I'm talking.
Yeah.
And that's probably dangerous. But, whether we go to a pizza place and, sit down and meet and greet and talk. And I'm just putting it out there. I'm not saying we're going to do it. I'm saying if you would like for us to do it, if there's enough interest in it, we can.
Absolutely.
If there's only one person that's interested in it, then I don't know, maybe we just have something at our home. I'm open to whatever.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things that we've wanted to do really from the beginning is to provide opportunity and empower people to be able to make their own decisions, right? So when we first were talking about just masking, the face masking, the goal was to provide an opportunity for people to make their own medical decisions, right? Make the choice.
Yeah, if you want to wear a mask, wear a mask.
When it comes to education, we want to see the same thing. So we believe firmly, strongly that the parent is the best educator. And we believe that the direction that a child's education should go should be dictated by the parent. We believe that's God's way of doing things. And so, Unmasked Tulare County is, this really fits within our vision. Our goal is providing some resources to empower people within our group to take those things into their own hands, make their own decisions, live from a place of liberty instead of a place where someone else is just dictating what you have to do because, whatever. So anyway, hopefully you found tonight beneficial. Hopefully it's a good start to a continued conversation and resources as well. So I
Yeah,
think
who said
that
unmasking the truth?
I think that we're going to wrap things up right now. I'm going to pray like I always do on these things. We're just going to ask God's blessing, his favor, his direction, and all of that on any of us who are making decisions when it comes to what to do with our kids, decisions on whether or not to run for things like school board or city council, and all of that. So if you would bow your head with me, and we're going to close this thing out in prayer. Father, we thank you for community. We thank you for your plan, your ideas of freedom and liberty. We thank you that you've placed us in a country that was founded upon these principles, that all men are free, that all men are created equal and endowed by their creator, certain unalienable rights. And that, we have this foundation, this godly foundation as a nation. And God, we know that progressivism and Marxism and all of these things have come in, and they are threatening our way of life. And I thank you, Lord, for the fact that so many people are waking up to this and realizing that if something is not done, we're going to lose our way of life. So God, I want to just ask you to guide and direct every family that's represented from those who are watching this, and even those who are not, that you would just lead and guide us into your direction, your path for our families and for our children. God, if you want us to homeschool our children, we pray that you would just plant people in our lives that would be able to help us walk down that path, that you would give us the creativity and the understanding of our children. Help us to understand easily the way that our children think, the way that they learn, the way that they process things. Lord, I pray for people who are feeling inadequate in stepping into this role. I stand against fear, and I say, fear, you have to bow. And I say that just freedom and passion and power and sound mind be released into those who are maybe feeling fearful or feeling inadequate or anxious. So I just release that, Lord. I release your peace. I release your grace. I release your mercy, and just ask you to step in and do a mighty work in the minds and hearts of those who might need it in this decision-making process. God, I pray that you would raise up, that you would tickle in the hearts, that you would let people know how you're leading them in the way if they're supposed to run for elected office. God, just begin to bubble that up, or continue to bubble that up. Confirm the call in their lives if they are to step into this situation, and then give them the courage and the resources to be able to step into this and accomplish your will in their life. And God, above everything else, I just pray that you lead us and guide us and empower us to do your will in everything that we do in our lives. God, I'm not asking you to step into my ideas. I'm asking you to help me to step into your ideas, your leading, your guiding, because that's where your power is. That's where your authority is. And so, God, for everybody who's here, I pray that you would strengthen them, that you would give them the strength and the courage of a lion in their hearts right now, that you would give them clear direction as far as how to lead their own home and their own families, where they need to get involved in the community. And God, I just pray blessing, blessing, blessing on each individual, each family who's watching this here tonight. Lord, for each of our communities and our cities, I pray that you would bless them, that you would awaken them, that you would strengthen them. Lord, for our county as a whole, I just pray your protection. I pray your angels be watching over us and just keeping us from the influences that would try to ruin us. And I just ask all these things in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Whew. Good times. So we love you. We appreciate you. We've taken almost 2 hours of your time, so we are certainly grateful for that. We don't take that lightly. Hopefully you found it to be beneficial, and we will talk to you soon. Any questions, reach out. Any comments, certainly reach out, and we'll do the best we can to help with anything you are wondering about. All right. We love you.